My talk today is about my friend Max Halverson. He was born in Roland, Iowa in 1924. He and his family moved to Des Moines a few years later, or I'm not sure when, it doesn't matter. But that's where, in Des Moines, is where he went to school and where he, grew to be a teenager. And as a teenager, he said when he was 14 or 15, a family friend introduced him to a man who had an art studio in the area. And so Max went and showed him some of his cartooning, what he could do with pen and ink and that sort of thing. And the man was excited to see what he could do, and offered him a job after school. And Max said, really and truly, it was more like he became their gopher. But that's okay. He was there with other people. He was showing up on time for work and doing all of these things. That's very important in starting to work at some point or time. I'll talk about this cartoon that he did a little bit later, but this gives us an idea. When he was this teenager, 14 or 15 years old, he went to had the opportunity to be there at this art studio, and one day they got an order or a request from downtown. It was the Beals Lithography Company, and they wanted somebody to design some cartoon postcards that they could publish and add to what they were already publishing in the way of postcards, mostly comics, to have on racks and so forth around to sell. So the man who was with the art studio, he suggested that Max be the one, and he took that job right on. Now, what they wanted Max to do was to think about, you have to work out the right proportions, and it's roughly 8.5 by 11 piece of paper or cardboard or artboard or whatever that they were. But what he wanted was for Max to come up with the ideas for the card, maybe an idea for the artwork and then some of the text. And then he would have another artist there in the studio fill it in and do the coloring and so forth, and then send it on down to Beals downtown. Well, they did that, but Max was upset. He wanted to do the whole thing. He was capable of it. He didn't like this idea of just doing a sketch. He wanted to see the whole process through. So one day on his own, he didn't have to go to work that day, obviously, I guess, but he got on his bicycle and he went downtown into Des Moines to the Beals Company. I don't know anything about the person he talked to, if it was male or female, it doesn't matter. But he talked to somebody and said, hey, I'm the cartoonist that's been doing the cards that they're sending down here to you. I'd like to do the whole thing. And he showed some examples of what he could do as finished products. And they were impressed, whoever it was he was talking to, and encouraged him to, I don't know if he sent him home with a little assignment to do 2 or 3 of this or that or whatever, but they liked what they were seeing. And so this is how Max got started making postcard art for Beals Lithography Company in Des Moines, Iowa. Beals, as you know, is a big publisher of linen postcards. They had what they called a special finish. They said it's an art tone or glow var finish. Glow, GLO dash var, VAR, I guess kind of like for varnish, but a glow var finish. Well, Cartike had a special surface and image and so forth, and so did Beals, and so did other linen postcard publishers. Kropp up in Milwaukee also had a special finish for theirs that they were proud of, and that's what they became famous for. The one problem with the Beals is that they didn't want Max to initial or to sign his name. They wanted to keep him kind of secret. And Max was kind of upset with that at the time, but he said, maybe they didn't want anybody else to find out who he was and to get him or to offer him probably more money. But he went ahead, and then he laughed as he was telling me the story, and he said, you know how it is, Hal. He said, if somebody says you can't do something or shouldn't do something, well, it kind of sparks your interest, like it would be fun to try, or, let's give it a whirl. And that's what he did. And I'm going to show you in some examples in a little bit, pretty soon, of where he did sign a few cards and they slipped through the hatchet man, or the person with the airbrush that would be cleaning up and getting rid of that sort of part of whatever an artist had submitted. In any case, let's take a look at some cards. We have a lot to look at, and I'll stop with my spiel about Max, and we'll look at a number of his cards right now, please. This, by the way, is the book Propaganda Postcards of World War II by Ron Menchine that Dolores and her husband Leon brought to me about 2001. The book says on the cover that it was printed in 2000, but I learned about it a little bit later. They brought me a beautiful copy, all signed by Ron and everything inscribed. But inside this book, Ron and friends had done the research, and they were trying to match up postcards and to identify the artist. That's important to us postcard collectors. And if we don't know the artist, then how else do you group them, maybe, but by topic or by publisher? Well, we knew that this big group of cards by Beals, no one unsigned, we didn't know the artist. I say we, they didn't know. I'm going to show you some cards, and we'll go on more with this story. Let me just mention briefly here, or the person that Max worked with at Beals left Beals after a time, I'm not sure exactly when, and went to work for Kropp up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That man wrote back to Max and said, look, Kropp up here, I'm working for another postcard publisher, and they would like for you to do some soldier postcards, and they'll let you sign them. You can sign each one. I mean, printed but you can identify your work and identify your name together on these Kropp postcards. And so that was really pleasing. And so he did those cards, and those cards, as few as there are, I mean, in number, they're not rare, but they're 9 cards altogether. But that was the missing link. That was the Rosetta Stone to identifying all of these unsigned cards that he had done for Beals. They knew from then on that it was Max Halverson, and that's what was presented in Ron Menchine's book, that this is the artist who did it. Shortly thereafter, Max Halverson got a copy of the book. He didn't know anything about it. And he called, or he wrote to Ron and said, how did you figure that out? And he told him that it was the Kropp cards that were signed that it was the same little guys. It was the same soldiers and female soldiers too in training. And so that's how that was the missing link there. Let's look at some postcards. This is a series. They're all Beals did them with, it was GC, and that stands for General Comics. I'm just showing a few. I'm starting with number 8 here, I think, but just to give you a flavor of his characters that he used. And a lot of times you look at rosy cheeks on their face, and then you look at their shoes. They're kind of like clodhoppers, or their boots or shoes, and or big toes. There are some of those too. But this is fun, and you can see the humor that used to sell. I think humor changes over the years, and this may not be so uh, knee slapping as it was in the 40s when this came out. But anyway, it's something that would have appealed to somebody to send home to, buy for 2 for a nickel or something like that at a postcard shop or off of a rack. It's the personality that he put in the animals. You'll see here's a cow, and you're going to see another one where it's we'll look at it, a horse, a mule, something like that. Lots of the cat over here. He loved dogs, and so he had drew lots of dogs in his artwork. You see again the rosy cheeks. This is look at the Scottish plaid here. And a lot of the cards, as far as comics, they had to do with drinking, and whether you'd had too much or on a tear, coming in the back door at home, all of those kinds of things were expressed in comic postcards. And here's an awful cute dog down here at the bottom. Here, look at that mule. He's really getting, or horse. I think it's a mule kicking. My friend Trenton Boyd would know for sure, and then start telling me why. But anyway, this is a very colorful, very typical Max Halverson. Now, this is our first example, and I've only found 2. And I've talked to Dennis McBurney, and he's spotted these also. But I'm giving this as an assignment. If you're a Halverson collector, get out your magnifying glass and start looking and seeing if you can find any evidence of Max's name or initials. Down here by the coffee pot, you're going to see the MH with the kind of the oval underneath, and that's Max's initials that slip by the man or the woman with the airbrush that would have delighted in taking that out and removing it altogether. But this is one of the cards that slipped through, and Max just loved it. He was thrilled that they hadn't noticed this, and he was still thrilled all those 50 or 60 years later. This is one of the patriotic anti-Axis cards in this general series. I think this may be the only one in this series. The floating heads of Hitler, Hirohito, Mussolini, and the skunk. You say, which is the skunk? Well, they all were. This is a very strong image. It's not impossible to find, but it's probably one of the more common ones of his work. This, we're talking about wartime. We're talking about rationing tires and rationing sugar and so forth. And here they're making a tire do. This is overstated. That's the way a comic artist does a lot of times. No tire would have that many patches on it, but that's what they're showing, and that's what they're having fun with. And somebody see that, they would know right away. They don't have to be told what's happening or the fact that they can't go buy a new set of tires right now. Now, here's the other example of Max's initials surviving the airbrush artist. Over here on this dog to the right, you can see the MH and the oval under it. That's Max's initials. So those are the 2 examples. This one is on number 52, and the other one was number 29 in the general series. Those two cards, if you get a chance to pick them up, if you're going to be a Halverson collector, those are the two that I would certainly look for, along with lots of others. There in this general series, there were 63 cards made. Next is the Kropp cards, where I told you that he was able to. This man had left Beals, gone to Kropp, and said, "Hey, make some postcards for us, and we'll let you sign your name on them." Here's the first example. There are 9 cards altogether. This is the first 8. Starts with number C185. Kropp's name is on the front of all their cards, where Beals are identified on the reverse. You can see his handsome signature down here in the lower right corner. But this is kind of a set of cards made up to talk about the day in the life of a soldier in training camp. Bugle in the morning, and here they're getting dressed and getting their ties tied and their shirts tucked in and so forth. And again, the Halverson signature, lower right. They're in the mess hall. They're having chow, and soldiers are mighty happy to be getting fed, and good meals and healthy meals, and adding muscle and adding strength, and getting them in shape. That was what they were there for in training camp. The great signature here in the lower right corner by Max. Out on the training field, lots of marching, working with rifles and holding them properly and so forth. It looks like this fellow on the right is kind of late getting there, but he's getting his shirt tucked in, and I don't see his rifle, so maybe he'll have to run back for it. We'll see. Signed in the lower right again. This poor fella, he's just here at payday, but all of the cleaning bills and canteen bills and insurance and everything that he's had left him very little money after he got paid. And we all go through that. If you get a paycheck, it's never enough to last for very long. Here we are, lots of walking, lots of marching, taking off those big old heavy boots, and his shoes are the woolly socks and everything. It looks like they're pretty smelly, but he really has a beat look to his eyes and his face. Again, the red cheeks and these big boots, these big feet and everything. And here we are getting ready for bed. At the end of the day, it's the tattoo, he says. It's the getting ready, set for bed. And this with the man playing the bugle outside the window, and they're just getting ready to turn off the light to call it a day. Signed in the lower right corner again for this Kropp card. The next card, you can see it's kind of in the day in the life, but this is a little bit different. It's still Kropp, number C193, which follows right along, but it's not kind of in that same series. A lot more going on with it design-wise. Beautiful pots and pans, lots of color work here. But it's clever. They call me Admiral because I'm in charge of the vessels. Here's some more, Admiral, and bring him in. He's obviously doing all the pots and pans washing. Big job. And here's Max's signature in one of the pans down here in the lower right. Okay, that takes care of the Kropp cards. That was the Rosetta Stone that showed who was this artist for all of those Beals cards. Now let's look at some of the Army comics. This was an AC. This was a big series. It had 44 in it. I think I told you a while ago that the general, they had 63. It doesn't matter. Let's look at them. The Army series may have been, we don't know, but may have been what maybe Max started working on. The first few they have a little bit different look to the people and the features and everything, where it might be Max's sketch that then somebody else finished it up and put their flavor onto it, and it wasn't pure Max. But we know that that's the way it started, and then Max got down there downtown to Beals and kind of self-employed himself and took care of things. This again is not quite, the shoes are pretty good, but well, it's just not, it doesn't have quite the flavor and everything as it completed Max Halverson. That's number 3, and this is number 5, Pots and Pans. This is getting pretty close with the, but we're not sure. You see, there's no company history. There's no company files. There's nothing like there is for the Kurtike Company or any other postcard company that I know about. So we have to do our best to think back and to try to kind of fit things together. And so we do know that there was this, at the very beginning, he was doing sketches, and these may be some of those. Again, this is getting to look a little bit more like Max for sure, but doing the KP, a lot of potato peeling. And this one, I had notes from Dennis McBurney about this one just the other day. He wonders about this, if this is really Max. It doesn't matter. It's part of the series, and we're glad to have it. And whether it's, it's just part of the story. Now, this really does look, to me anyway, like Max. This is the 14th in the series, and the soldier's soaking his feet, who, he's taken off his shoes and feels miserable and probably has lots of blisters and everything. So it's part of Army life, part of being in the infantry. Here's kind of a before and after coming to their training camp, or really it says recruiting station, and then to the training camp. And here's the guy who's been here for a while. And look, he's popped his buttons off of his shirt on top. And the buttons are flying. And he's so proud of, loves being in the service. He likes the camaraderie. He likes the uniform, and he looks pretty sharp. And he's well fed, we'll put it that way. I have a lot of material to show, so that's why I'm trying to kind of hurry along. Very colorful, strong images. The lady's interesting. She's probably a sweetheart, probably not a mother, but probably a girlfriend back home, or maybe a new wife. The man's outside bugling and waking him up from too short of a night. Big shoes down here on the lower left. And here, training with weaponry and big guns and safety measures. And you can see holding your hands over your ears, a lot of precautions that had to be taken when using weapons like this. You can see, by the way, if that card we just looked at, he had kind of the World War I type of helmet on, kind of the flat one. Those were left over from the World War I, and a lot of supplies and uniforms and guns and everything were used at the beginning of our involvement after Pearl Harbor. Here's a pretty scarce anti-Axis card with the soldier working over Hitler, two-fisted American way. This is very hard to find. Do watch out for it. It's a soldier stomping the snakes, the Hitler and Hirohito and Mussolini, all with snake heads. And this is a tough card to find. Here they're kicking the Axis from Russia, North Africa, the Far East, and the American soldier is just really happy, and they're making some progress and starting to win a few skirmishes and battles and, territory for sure. It's a tough card. This one also is tough. showing the imprint of his boot on the backside of Adolf Hitler. A happy smile on the soldier's face for sure. This is one of the jumbo cards. There are two jumbo Halverson cards that I know about. This is the one that's done for the Army series. And you can see that it's identified down here in the lower left, and it says Camp Dodge, Iowa. It may appear for some other training place too. I don't know. But this one, it's Kurtike, it's linen. I said Kurtike. It's linen. It's published by Beals. It's this art tone glow var finish, like all of Beals' cards, but shows a cross section of life at the training camp. Jeeps, tanks, soldiering, infantry, marching, working with onions. And here he has a gas mask on, and pup tent, all sorts of training, even aircraft up above in the sky. But the jumbo cards are hard to find. Dealers don't like them. They don't fit into their boxes. But watch for them on eBay. The ones I have come from eBay, I think almost exclusively. You can see the lower right and the upper left right corner, some serious creasing that we don't like, but it's a big card. It's 7 by 11 inches. So it's a good size card. And if it went through the mail, chances are it had some age wear that way, or yeah. And so you kind of have to take what you can get. And I think I try to get them, pick them up when I can, because somebody someday will be happy to trade you out of a duplicate or work that way. But the jumbo cards are tough to find. Then we go into a group of aviation comics, just a few in that. I think I have 50, or there are 15 different in the series. I'm just going to show you a few. Here's the guy falling from the sky, and you can see he has the parachute on, but I don't see any activity as far as pulling the rope. He may hit the surface before. He may be a goner, but a bird's trying to talk to him, it looks like. But this looks pretty serious right here. Here's a man that's getting ready to pull his parachute open. Another one in the background has his open and trying to get some air in there. Birds are looking. It's you know, it just it's hilarious, but it's scary. It's serious. It's if it doesn't open, then you don't live. You just die. So it's pretty horrible, but something that a lot of men had training in, and a lot survived and got the job done. Jumping out of planes, just think how horrible that would be. But that was a big part of jumping out with parachutes and getting behind enemy lines and so forth. I hope they replace these things if they don't work. Well, ha, ha, ha. And he's coming down. He's even got a pillow on his rear end, and you can see the plane in the background, and the birds are starting to talk to him, and lots of action there. And he's pretty happy. I mean, he's gonna make it. His chute has opened. This is a card that shows it's aviation, but and it's the last. Well, it's number 14, I think, in this series. But you understand, it says, shucks, I used to take my car apart blindfolded. Well, they trained you to do that with your weapon too, your rifle. But lots of parts to an airplane, and trying to use parts off of one plane to make another one work, and try to use what you have. It would have been frustrating and hilarious to men that were training to do this and doing it on the job too. This is obviously a anti-axis card in that aviation series, and it's the best one as far as for what we're talking about for being anti-axis. But tough card to find, a vertical card, and I think the black here is probably cancellation from, being canceled and then something else. But gosh, I'm proud to have this card, and I'll look for a replacement someday, but it's a dandy. Okay, next series, I think. He did a few for the Navy. We have in our checklist 3. Let's look at, I think I'm lacking number 1, and this is number 2. Very typical Max Halverson men in their hammocks, and this is where I hang out, literally in their hammocks on ship. That's number 2 in the series. And let's look at number 3. This is on board ship, and they're mopping the deck, and the other men are polishing the guns up above, and you see the ship behind them. They often were together, whether they were fuel ships or supplies or what. There would be groups of them out in the sea. But getting ready for the big mop up. And like I said, I don't have number 1, so I've never seen it. Why they're scarce, I don't know. You just don't know a lot of times. This is a little series of whack cards. Let's look at this whack series. There are 30 in all, and this shows the lady. All of these things: studying, marching, exercising, washing, drilling, all of these things that they had to do. And here they were doing them for the first time. They're in Fort Des Moines, Iowa. All started in June 1942. Okay, here are 2 people that are 2 cards. They're horizontal cards, and so I put them together to show the differences. The top card shows that WAAC, and the bottom one is after they had made the revision to just Women's Army Corps. I think the WAAC is tougher to find, so watch for it, and you'll probably see more of the WAC than the other. But they're good to pick up, and it's a series of a lot of cards. You see them in lots of auctions. You see them on eBay all the time, but there are a few to watch out for, and they're worthwhile and easy to see. Now, this is the back of one of them. This hopes things are going okay back home. I wrote to Pa asking him to send some men down here. Boy, would they be welcome. Things are swell, and I still love it, believe it or not. She's writing to her mom. She's writing from Georgia. She's able to use a free franc instead of a stamp over here in the stamp box, as long as she wrote her name and mailing address. Mailing was very, very important to service people, and they look forward to it, and they were encouraged to write home. And then those at home were encouraged to write to those who were in service camps and training camps and overseas and so forth. Keep the boxes of cookies coming, or just let them hear from home. Here she's eating away, good square meal for sure, looking very spiffy in her uniform. And here she is looking at the dresses and the hats that she might be able to wear once the war is over, or what other people are seeing, but she's proud to be in her uniform. It was a good experience for a lot of the ladies. And here we are at a listening device of some sort. I'm not sure exactly, but this is, you can see her earphones on, and she's listening for maybe planes coming in or who knows what. But this is part of a training element that they were seeing about, and Max had it here in this series. Looking very spiffy. And you can see this has a little censoring here. And I'll let you figure out what she may be saying or thinking. But it's just part of Army life and being with other men or being with other women. And yeah, you heard maybe some new words when you got into the service. Here's one of the anti-Axis cars. These ladies are sitting on top of Hitler and whistling, and the country did it before and we're going to help do it again. That's part of a song. I'll spare you. I could sing it for you, but Dolores and I could do that really well sometime. And here's the other set of cards that you want to watch for this wax series. The Foot Locker at the top card shows the WAAC, and on the blanket that has over her. That's the easy place to watch for the card. You can just be flipping through cards at a dealer's table or at a flea market. And if you see the initials on the blanket, then you want to put it in your pile that you want to take home with you, because it's tougher to find. You'll find a lot more of the one in the lower picture showing for the WAC. And so I think the W2AC is harder to find. The quicker you do, the easier. It'll just get it over with and pick them up, and you'll be happy later. We're really going to set them on their axes for sure. Lots of kicking in Max's cards, whether it's Uncle Sam or ladies or soldiers. This one is a difficult one to find. It's not the most difficult, but it's not like the snakes, but it's tough to find. Taking Hitler home, it said, "I'm bringing home the bacon." Well, you've heard that expression before, but bringing him home with the noose around the neck. Kicking old Hitler again. I'm showing there's a big kick in this outfit for sure. This one shows up a little more frequently, but all of these are give you a challenge, something to look for. There's just 30 in the set, and it'll be fun for you to work to build them one by one. If you can buy them anyway, I won't go into that. I started to say, if you can buy them at a store like a coin store or stamp store for anything you want, you just ask for the number, then that takes a lot of the fun out of it. The search, the chase, going to a postcard show, shopping on eBay, that's what's fun. Here's another one of the jumbo postcards. They measure 7 inches by 11 inches. Made by Beals, they're linen. This is, there are 2 different ones that I know of this way. Not an Idle Minute at Fort Des Moines, Iowa. And the next one is the same card, but instead of, it says Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia. So both of them are tough because they're large and dealers don't like them. And you can see some creases here on this corner and here in the right corner, and that's just the way they come. And so try to upgrade later on after you get one of these, and I'm sure you can always trade or give somebody a Christmas present sometime, and they'll really thank you for it. Great card. And I personally, I have an album of nothing but oversized World War II cards, and it's amazing how many there were. This is one of the best ones in my album. Now there's a small little group of Texas cards. I think we're going to look at 3. They've all been published by Kropp in Milwaukee. And this says we think that stands for Texas, T42. And what makes this hilarious is that looking over here at the left, it looks like, to me, here in a Kansas boy, that might be a saguaro cactus. and you can help me out. Do they really exist in Texas too, or is that more Arizona? And it doesn't matter, of course, but this is something that, maybe Max had never been to Texas, very possibly. But you can see signature here on the right, just to the right of the bucking horse. And he was proud to do these. This is for the Kropp Company. This is done by the Kropp Company, the people that allowed him to sign the cards. Again, his signature's lower right next to this cactus. Looks like a prickly pear. I think Ken and Debbie would know about that. This is the last of the 3 Texas cards. And again, Saguaro Texas or cactus in the upper left corner. Now, this is the Iraq War. And this is what Max sent me one time. He said, this is this war that was going on then. You see, we're talking about 2002 here, and the 9/11 disaster was in 2001, I think. And so he said, it's just different. He said, there's not the tanks, there's not the marching in the mud, there's not all of this stuff. He said, it's hard to think of something that's funny or humorous about this war. But he said, I'll think about it. This is when I was suggesting that maybe we would do one, or he would do one, and I could help get it printed, get it published. Well, he liked the idea in that it was invigorating his mind and everything. He was able to start thinking about postcards again after all of these years. That had been forever since he'd done any of them. And he stopped right before he went to training camp himself when he joined the Army in 1943, after he graduated from high school. Then he, that was the last of the postcards that he did. He did do some editorial page cartoons for the Tribune and another paper in the Des Moines area that was syndicated. So I guess they would have gone out. They weren't postcards, but they were more the square cartoons like Herb Block and others do. This is this is number 1. This is the first card that he did. Showing Max out there kicking, but instead of a soldier or a whack, here's Uncle Sam doing the kicking, and he's kicking Osama bin Laden. Now, this card is the same size as all of Max's other cards, except for the jumbo cards. And this is something he wanted. He said, no, I don't want the larger size. He said, I want it this size. Well, he got it back. And we printed, I think, he wanted 500 copies. So I sent him 500, and I believe I had 500 printed too. Then after he saw this, he said, I think you're right. He said, if we do another one, let's make it a little bit larger, and it'll give me more space to put in more artwork and so forth. So this was the first one, done in 2002. This is number 2, showing the USA Eagle bringing 2 terrorists. They're in Iraq and Afghanistan, all of that. And here we are in 2003. And I don't know if you remember Baghdad Bob or not, but he was the Minister of Information there in Baghdad, and colorful guy, and always got lots of press. And here he shows him kind of with Saddam Hussein being a puppet. And he's, if everybody believes this hooey, they will believe just about anything. The great Baghdad Bob and his real life dummy Saddam. But this would have brought smiles to any soldiers or face. And this was done in 2003. It's the number 3 in that series. He didn't really, set out to do a certain number. He would have ideas, and he'd say, well, I let's do another one, and that's kind of how this developed. This was card number 4, done in 2003. Saddam looking, they're still looking for Osama bin Laden. And this is 2003, number 5, showing Saddam with a wig on, hoping that he could pose as somebody he wasn't so he could get the reward money. He liked this idea of $25 million reward. But anyway, these soldiers and Marines here, they look like they're enjoying this. The next one's number 6, and this is Saddam's 2 sons. Uday or Uda, I can't remember quite. And then the other one, I need to ask Google or something about what his sons' names were. I should have done that before this. But anyway, this is number 6, and it was done in 2003. Is Meals on Wheels, delivering food to Saddam when he was in the underneath subterranean hole there in this village, and he's coming out to pay for the food and wondering if the man has a change for $100 bill. Seems like he took quite a bit with him, and he was wanting a little change. Anyway, this is funny too. This is the last one that I can think of, or that I have in my album. Maybe there's another one. Dennis mentioned 8 in this series, but we'll look at
Dennis was wrong.
I
have the same 7.
Okay, good. Thanks, Dennis. Okay, I wanted to show briefly, we're almost through, folks, checklist and resources. Let's look at this. Here is a picture of Max and Hal, and you can see the wind got my hair there in the back. And also down here, just below that, it's Max, and he's in front of the World War II monument that he was so proud to have been a part of making and designing and everything and raising money for. But this is the first state World War II monument where funds had been donated by individuals rather than a government or a state itself. And so this is where we met that day in 2002. And then we had lunch together, and then I think he took me to his home. And here's Max and Rose, his pretty wife, next to him. I got that picture of him. And, at the time you thought, well, this is all before phone computers and phone cameras and stuff. I was still doing film. I have no idea where the film is itself, the negatives and so forth. But, I wish I'd have taken a lot more pictures, but I'm grateful to have these. Here's a letter he wrote to me 21 years ago, January 9th, 2002. And one of the first letters, and I love it because it's illustrated, and he has his dog there, Bandit, that he loves so much, and great fun. And this is an early checklist. This is the only thing we had to go on through the 1988, 89, and 90. That was the 3rd printing. But it was done by Gilbert Pittman here in Wichita, and his friend Roberta Greiner in Greensboro, North Carolina. They did all this by mail. I think they probably met at a few postcard shows too, but they developed this military checklist by publishers, not so much by the artists. They didn't, no one knew information about artists as much as they knew now. This is a humorous drawing that he did for Ron Menchine, the man who did the propaganda book. And he was making fun of Ron not having a computer. He was sure he was the only one in the world that didn't own a computer, but Ron was sending messages by pigeon mail. It's more of the humor, more of the lightheartedness. Max was so much fun to be with, and full of puns and jokes, and just a real joy. This is Thomas Garnhart's big checklist on World War II postcards, not only just propaganda and just the anti-Axis, but everything. I mean, the USO clubs and the large letter cards and all of that. He issued this in two different CD discs, and I took my disc one to a printer, and they were able to print it out for me. So I have it all with colored illustrations. It's a joy. It's thick. It's over an inch thick, and it was expensive to do, but it was a gold mine of information to take with you. And this is the card or the book that we talked about earlier, Ron Menchine's book on propaganda postcards. For this book or anything, especially out of print, that you're looking for, here's a hint. Go to bookfinder.com, bookfinder, one word, and you'll be amazed at what's there. Any book that I find out about, somebody's talking about it, I'll go to Bookfinder. They have used copies and they have new copies, and you can a lot of times find a good deal. But this is a great book to have. I would encourage any postcard collector to get a copy and to learn more about the propaganda effort that went on during World War II. That's it, folks. You've survived. That's all. Thank you so much for coming. My goodness, we appreciate being here. Let me just again, let's ask Bill Burton and see if there's anybody that has any questions or comments.
Al, you just took the wind out of my sails by talking about where you can get the book, because Shab Levine wanted to know if it's available for sale. And it's not available retail anymore. You have to go find it used. Is that the idea?
They have it on Amazon. There says one copy left for $8 and something, paperback.
Well, that's a good deal, because I think it was close to $30 at the time, a new price. But it's paperback, but it's a wonderful book. I really encourage you to get it. The $8 is a good price.
Yeah, that's what it's.
Did Max Halverson do other postcards besides the propaganda cards of World War II?
Well, remember that general series of comics? There were 63 in that series. But again, they were all unsigned. But the outhouses and the big ladies and the swimsuits and all of that sort of thing. So I collect all of Max's work, not just the military ones, but it's fun. They, a lot of them they used to be a quarter and 30 cents and stuff like that, but now they're $1 or $2. But they're worthwhile to have, and I think you know how linens are. They're quality paper. We look down our nose at linens a lot of times, and boy, there's lots of great, wonderful linens, and I've really had to change my tune over the years.
Oh, on the cover of the propaganda postcard book, one of the illustrations was by I didn't know he made postcards. They must have turned them into postcards, but I can't pronounce his name. It's Polish.
He's Polish.
Arthur, and again, it's spelled S-Z-Y-K.
Right.
But he was an amazing illustrator.
Schick Shaver. That's how you pronounce it.
Schick, okay.
Schick.
But
and those cards were published by Esquire magazine.
Oh, okay.
They too are larger than I can't remember the exact measurements, but they're larger than a modern continental size card. And they were sold for a quarter. You got the envelope of I think 6 or 7 like that. But I recently found the magazine ad, and I'm going to be doing something on Facebook, I think, or our home front page telling about that, how they were sold and available, because we didn't know that for a long time.
He was an amazing illustrator.
Oh, yeah.
And this was the catalog from the New York Historical Society show in 2017.
Yeah.
But he's really worth looking at. He was a phenomenal artist.
Really
Absolutely
was.
worth looking at. Yes.
He's great. Somebody else?
Katie Clark wanted to know where the Kropp soldier cars were sold and who would have been buying them.
Well, I think they were so. I think all of these were sold in PXs at training camps. Postcards used to be available in lots of stores. Drugstores had them. We used to have them in our grocery store, and then, people kind of quit using them. But I think at PXs and in training camps, because so many of them were sent by the soldiers home. Those are the ones, I love to look at the backs and to see them free franked. I like all of that. And
Al?
yes,
During the war, these postcards were part of the news media of the day. I mean, this part of this, for everybody, not just the soldiers at camp, is like, this is what's going on.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Okay, Archie Aarons pointed out that Max's work is new to me. And he said, and I'm quoting here now, Max's own cards are so colored and how much more colorful they are than the ones that have been drawn and somebody else colored them in. But it was true that Max did his cards and then his own coloration, and that's the way they were printed.
I think not at the very beginning, or we got the story that professional colorists did them, but I think pretty soon they appreciated his work, and I think most of it is his own.
Okay.
That's my
Al, I
feeling.
have some of the Beal cards that are published by Asheville Postcard
Yes.
Company.
Yes. Now, those have Asheville's name on them, but they were actually, my sources say, printed by Beals.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah.
They
That's
can
true.
on those. Are they all whack cards? Because that was what I've been told was the only ones that Asheville did.
Or what?
The whack, the Women Army Corps.
The
No,
ones
I
have,
think there are
yes,
others
that's what they
too.
are.
There were others. Okay.
Yeah. Here's a general series of comics. I just had those. Yeah. So that's in Asheville.
All right.
So-
So more to look out for.
Yeah. Another album.
All right.
Katie Clark said this is somewhat confusing, but he didn't do all these just while he was still in high school. He had a long career, right?
No, he did them all before he graduated from high school. He went to the Army.
And afterwards?
He came home from the Army. He had training in drafting, and he worked for several architectural firms. He did no more postcards until he did these for the Iraq War.
Well, that's a gap of like 40 years. Wow.
Yep.
No, we're talking about he was 15, 16, it's like 3 or 4 years. Yeah, that's when he did them. Yeah.
Wow. Katie again asked or saying, Ken Wilson's, I have some Beals and some of the Asheville cards. Were his cards published anywhere else besides Beals?
Beals and Kropp and the Asheville, those are the only, and like I said, the Asheville cards were printed by Beals, but they have Asheville's name on them. Those are the only 3 that I know besides the Iraq cards.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you've made one convert. Richard Eisenhower says, thanks to the Halverson presentation, Hal, I'm going to begin looking for them. So you're going to have a competitor now.
Well, that's okay. Dennis McBurney's a collector, and several of us do them. And gosh, it's been fun. And like I said, it used to be you could find them for a quarter and 50 cents, and some of the comic stuff you probably still could. But anyway, they're neat, and there are these checklists that exist. His son, he had two sons and a daughter. The daughter lived in Tasmania off of Australia, and the one son, I corresponded with him, and he sent me, some information back in the early 2000s. And then for some reason, I guess I got busy or he got busy and we didn't talk anymore. I hope he's still alive. I should try to say hello sometime.
Ken Wilson points out that some of these cards are linked to the music of the time.
Yeah,
Like, you gotta quit kicking my dog around,
right.
and it don't mean a thing if you don't pull that string. Whoops, that's one. Or is that have that swing? I'm not sure which.
That's the song is Pull That String, but he was making puns off of those or using them.
Yeah. Well, interesting man. Yeah.
He certainly represented the women soldiers in very positive, strong light. They got their due on those cards.
Yeah. I'm sure they liked him, and
Kicking Hitler around.
that one that I showed used, that was sent by one of those ladies who was there at Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia, training back home to her mom, and said that, she really liked it and was glad to be there. So that's neat.
Calissa Ferrer picked up on the question of whether he's still alive and what else did he do besides postcards. Could you run that by us again?
Yeah, he died in 2006. He had some horrid cancers toward the end. What he did the rest of his life, for one thing, he was an artisan. He was a wood carver. He made totem poles. I wonder about barber poles. I should have asked him. But he gave talks to school groups, and all of these things were kind of covered in his obituary. But he did stained glass work. I think of Dennis McBurney, a stained glass man and his wife. But he did carpentry. A lot of the furniture in the home he had made, and they were just creative people. He made his own Christmas cards every time, and he did oil painting. He did watercolor. He was just a creative person. As far as places he worked, I can't remember.
Okay, well, that pretty much wraps it up in the form of comments, unless anybody else has anything.
Good. Anybody else?
His creative style was amazing for somebody that young, and his
Yeah.
sense of design, the way he'd place things on the page, it's really, really, he was advanced.
And he was self-taught. He never had any lessons or anything. But one thing I want to tell real quick. His father and Max's uncle, which would have been the father's brother, those two kids, their father died. They lived in New York City. Their father died when he was 49 years old. That left an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old, and they were taken and put in an orphanage in New York City. Then they were put on one of the orphan trains. Maybe you've read about it or heard about
Really?
orphan trains that went from New York City across the country. And they stopped. I don't know how often they stopped, but this one stopped at Nolan, Iowa, where he was born, where Max was born later. And one family, the Halverson family, took Max's dad and adopted him, and some other family took his brother, 12 years old, and I guess adopted him. but I just get chills thinking about it. And then to talk to somebody whose own parent, had gone through all that, just think about it.
So was this part of the orphan train movement? Was that what it was?
Yeah.
Well, that's what happened to Max's father when he was a kid, 8 years old.
But there's a film around on the orphan trains, isn't there?
Oh, I think so. And books and probably good videos and probably all sorts of things on YouTube too.
No postcards, though. I looked for them. Okay, I think that wraps it up then.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Well,
Hal. Good job.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Al.
Bye-bye. Thank you all.